Let's pray. Lord God, we come to you in a time of reflecting your word, recognizing that we are incapable of understanding or learning unless your Spirit opens our minds and our hearts to your truth. And so I just give you this time, Lord, and pray that you speak. You know each of us in our situation, what we need from you, and we know that your Spirit can speak into that. And so we just give you this time, Lord, and pray this in your name. Amen. So I don't know how many of you are like superhero fans or something like that. Society's kind of in that kind of craze, you know. If you're like a Marvel comics person, you know, we just went through the Avengers Endgame series, or Captain Marvel, or maybe you're a DC Comics, which is more of the Wonder Woman or Superman or Aquaman. All those kind of things are kind of going on, and Hollywood loves it because people are really caught up in it. Of course, there's the real life, which is even more powerful when thinking of heroes. Like Kendrick Stilla, he was a student in the school in Colorado that he gave his life because he and two other students rushed the shooter and saved a lot of lives, but his life was lost. When we think of heroes, we think about how they tend to inspire us to either be or do better. Well, the Bible's got a list of heroes as well. If you've ever been in Hebrews 11, Hebrews 11 is a list of faith heroes, if you will, or a hall of faith. And it lists all these people that were faithful to following God. And so you read in there about Noah, or about Abraham, or Isaac and Jacob, or Joseph, or Moses. And these are all, and many, many more, where they're described people that heard the call of God, they responded in faith and followed him. They were people that were ordinary, but we learned from those stories how God did extraordinary things to those people. But even though they were ordinary, they had fears, and they were human, and all these things that we would think we could relate to them. They really seemed larger than life. I mean, I can't imagine myself being a Noah kind of a person, you know, or an Abraham, or a Moses, or any of those kind of characters. I'm thinking, I don't know that I can live up to that kind of standard. Well, so today what I wanted to do is I wanted to focus on what I call ordinary heroes. And these are the heroes that don't make those kind of credits. They're not in Hebrews 11. If there was a movie, they might not even make the credits of the thing, or maybe it would just say friends or sidekicks or something. I wouldn't even get name recognition in who they are. But we might look at them and think that they're insignificant. But we know when we look at these kind of stories that God does significant things through them, and he does it through us as well. So what I want to look at is Mark, the book of Mark 2. You can look it up in the seats if they're all like the one in the front here. It's page 1553. And as you're looking that up, the scene here is that Jesus just started ministry. And so he's kind of going, in fact, he hasn't got all his disciples, because later on he finds Matthew. But up to that point, he's starting to teach. He's starting to heal, starting to cast out demons, but he's doing it quietly, telling people, don't tell anyone, that no one can resist it, keep it a secret. So they would tell people, and so word is caught up, and they're hearing about this man who can heal people and cast out demons, so they're just drawn to him. In fact, even before, in chapter 1, right at the end, it says as Jesus is going, he couldn't even stay in towns, because when he would go into a town, they would flood him, so he would stay outside of town, but they would still come and find him. And so as we look at this story and we understand kind of the scene that's being set up, we pick up the story then in Mark 2, starting at verse 1. And this is what it says. A few days later, when Jesus again entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home. So many gathered that there was no room left, not even outside the door, and he preached the word to them. Some men came bringing to him a paralytic, carried by 4 of them. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus, and after digging through it, lowered the mat the paralyzed man was lying on. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Son, your sins are forgiven." Now some teachers of the law were sitting there thinking to themselves, "Why does this fellow talk like that? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone?" Immediately Jesus knew in the spirit this was what they were thinking in their hearts, and he said to them, "Why are you thinking these things? Which is easier, to say to the paralytic, your sins are forgiven, or to say, get up, take your mat, and walk. But that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins, he said to the paralytic, I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home. He got up, took his mat, and walked out in full view of them all. This amazed everyone, and they praised God, saying, we have never seen anything like this. Now, before I look into the heroes I want to talk about in this story, I need to really, I got to just say what the main point of the story was. Because Jesus, while he was teaching and while he was healing and he was doing some miracles, this is the first time in here where Jesus is proclaiming to have the authority of God. When he talks about in verse 5, he says to the paralytic, your sins are forgiven. And so in the reaction to the Pharisees and the teachers was, wait a minute, he's blaspheming, which is, punishment of death. He's claiming that he has the power to be able to forgive sins. The word blasphemy literally means insulting or showing contempt or lack of reverence of God, or in the case of what Jesus was doing, the act of claiming the attributes of a deity. So in verse 10 in this passage, it says here in that moment, Jesus, he places himself at God's level by saying that he has the power to forgive sins. And then he backs it up by saying, look, I can say that and you'd never know, but just so that you understand I have this authority, he tells them to stand up and walk, and he's healed immediately. And so that was unheard of course, in the Pharisees, and really the beginning of them having a problem with Jesus and leading up to his eventual death. But what I want to spend a little time in is looking at the story kind of behind the story. When Jesus said in verse 5, Jesus saw their faith. He was referring to not only a paralytic here who wanted to be healed, but he was talking about the four friends, these ordinary heroes that changed the life of their friend and what they're willing to do. So what I want to do, taking out of the story, is look at what are the qualities of these heroes that kind of come out of the story that we look at today, and maybe more importantly, obviously, how those qualities translate to us and how we live each of our life every day. So when I look at the story, the first thing I see, I always warn people here because I don't do PowerPoint, hit the button. So I'm trying to be able to be good about that. I think the last time I was here, I went like 3 or 4 points and, better catch up. So first thing is they keep their eye on the prize, that being Jesus. Excuse me. I don't know, and I'm almost certain they didn't know a whole lot about Jesus because it was really kind of a secret at that point. The only thing they knew, the paralytic and the friends, was this guy had the ability to heal, the power to heal people who needed healing, and they had a friend who needed that. Ordinary heroes, they kind of know the answer to every question or every struggle, and it's Jesus. We joke about that in Sunday school, right? You're not sure the answer? Say Jesus. And, probably odds are you're going to get it right. Jesus is the source of true healing, and he knows what we need. Yes, we have doctors and nurses, and we have psychologists and family therapists and nutritionists and all these people, but everything that they offer us is temporary until we're able to deal with the spiritual healing that is necessary, which is through Jesus Christ. The sick need healing. The darkness needs light. Lost needs to be found. Jesus is the one who can bring about healing daily that leads to a transformational life that takes place. And so these friends keep that eye on the prize. They know we just need to get our friend in front of Jesus. Jesus said in Matthew 6, he was talking about worrying, and he said, why do you worry about what you eat, what you drink? And he didn't respond by saying, okay, here's 5 steps of how to be able to overcome worrying. In verse 33, he says, here's what you need to do. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you as well. Keep your eyes on the prize, is what he's really saying. The Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 9, he's talking about, he describes Christian life like a race. And so he says in there, he says, run the race as if to get the prize. Later on in Hebrews 12, 2, it talks about, similar to this idea of race. And in verse 2, it says, fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. As heroes, our main purpose in all things is to get people in front of Jesus. What does that look like in the ordinary hero? It's the coworker, it's the classmate, it's the friend who has a friend who's struggling and invites him to church. It's the parent who reminds your kids to take their problems through prayer into Jesus and to watch and listen for the answer. It's members of the church when you're struggling to figure out what is going on, says, hey, don't give up. God's got this. It's going to be okay. Or a church that reaches into the community as a light in the community through a VBS or other programs because they know they're bringing people into the presence of Jesus. And that's the most important thing. Or the people who push us to be able to be vulnerable, to really, the one that won't accept the first answer if I'm fine, but they go 2 or 3 times, no, really, how are you? No, really, how are you? They push us to be able to be vulnerable and know, here's where my struggle is. This is the mat that paralyzes me. And then they're willing to go a step further and be able to offer up prayer and bring them and their struggles before Jesus. If you want to be a hero to someone, ask him, how can I pray for you? What can I bring before Jesus on your behalf? They keep their eye on the prize. That's the most important thing. But also here, they put relationships before reputation, or maybe a better word is self-interest. In this story, these friends put everything on the line for their friend. You wouldn't think it is, but the problem is that people are labeled, and a cripple is considered the lowest level of society. And if you were to come alongside and show kindness or somehow help them, you could be drawn into that same label and treated the same. The Greeks would kill any cripple, a baby that was born. The Romans did the same thing. Israelites just treated it as like, okay, well, he sinned, and this is punishment for his sin. So they would see someone's crippled, and they know, well, here's someone's sin. He's less than, and they look at it. So then, in drawing in there, you are risking everything to be able to be a part of that and to be in there. So it says a lot about these friends who put a priority in the relationship with their friend at the risk of their own reputation. So the question: who are the people that you put your reputation on the line for? Who are the ones that are more than a convenience in your relationships or comfort? That we find the ones that minimal work, and those are always the fun ones to be around because it's like just relax. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but who are the ones you go for that really need a friend to be able to come along and help them, that challenge our priorities and our comforts? We have to be intentional in our relationships and put those as a priority, and not the risk of our own, even at the risk of our own self-interest. Knowing how important it is for them. There are people around us that don't have a friend, that don't have someone they can call on to help to get them in front of Jesus, or the outside looking in. Our church, we were approached by a rescue mission, and they have houses of people. Right now they don't have their own place, and so they come over and they need a place to worship, so they come to our 11 o'clock service. I kid you not, if you come to 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, it's a totally different church. And we have people with tattoos and all stuff, and they want to help, so we'll let them greet and do even ushering and help out with refreshments and do stuff. And but you walk in there and it's like, I'm honest, it's kind of uncomfortable. I'm thinking, ooh man, people come here and thinking, ooh, what is going on here? But they need Jesus, right? And so the important is the relationship, not the reputation of our church. That thinking, well, I want to go there because they got people, crazy people with tattoos and stuff. Everybody needs Jesus. And it's the willingness to put that out at risk. Jesus himself, later on, verse 17, experienced this very same thing, that they was questioning him being around sinners. And so they were kind of, it's putting a negative thing on Jesus. And so, verse 17, Jesus responds and says, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. So the question is, do you measure people? How they fit your style or your comfort? Or is it by a need? Is your focus on relationships or is on self-interest? A number of years ago, I was in leadership of a church, and we were evaluating our youth worker, youth leader. And it was interesting because there was some criticism. They said, well, he wouldn't go to my kid's basketball game. I never saw him over at the gym, and of course his kid was really good. But and they were talking about he's not helping out all these other kids and going to school events and all this stuff. But where was he? He was with about 4 kids that were really kind of outsiders trying to rebuild an engine and working on a car. He was building relationships with kids that normally weren't at the Christian school. They weren't. I finally said to this guy, look, he can never see our youth. He's going to succeed just going into college and everything. Those kids, they need someone around them. They're not going to succeed. You know, he was in the right place, but sure, he didn't fit our self-interest or what we consider to be what our expectation was, but he was right there trying to bring these people in front of Jesus. And that's what we're really called to do. So the question is, who are those relationships that you're investing in, that you know they need someone coming alongside and bring them in front of Jesus? Third thing in here was that they had a contagious faith. Someone in the group had this crazy idea, hey, if we just get our friend to Jesus, he's going to heal him. That's what I hear what's going on. And no doubt the paralytic probably heard it too. He thought, man, that would be awesome, but I can't get there. I'm incapable of doing that. And even to ask someone to do it is, again, jeopardizing their reputation. We don't know the whole story of how it went down, but there's certainly some assumptions that that was a risk on his part. But these friends are like, yeah, no way. We're bringing them to Jesus. And they were just, believable that it was going to happen. And no matter what was in their way, they were going to get him there. And it was the faith of the friends that saw this through. So they're taken there. They see the place is full. I can't get in. No doubt the paralytic say, "Oh, thanks, guys. I'm trying." Whoa, no. Let's go up on the roof. And then, what do we do? We'll dig a hole. We'll just get in front of Jesus. Even to lower him, they probably had to take, the rope or the cloth around their tunics and tie it on there. And there were some huge risks, but it was just get him in front of Jesus. Who knows what will happen? And that's what they did. And they did it. So in verse 5, Jesus says, I saw their faith. He didn't see his faith with the paralytic. He saw their faith. Their willingness to go against all extremes and to believe that if they just got him in front of Jesus. The Christian community, faith of others is often what sees us through. Maybe you've been discouraged or depressed. Maybe you've been in a situation where you're thinking it's just not going to work. Or I just give up. And have you ever had it? It's the faith of someone around you saying, don't give up. It's going to be okay. It's going to happen. We'll make it work. I'll come alongside with you. We're going to do this together. That's what it's meant to happen. In Ecclesiastes 4:5 and 11, it says this, 2 are better than one because they have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. I see too many people alone, and they don't have anybody to help them out. That's the problem we see often in society today. Kids coming out of the foster system and everything else, they're alone. And they need someone who comes alongside of them to be able to encourage them, and give them faith, and help them to believe what God can do. I imagine the people in here, I don't know all of you, certainly most of you don't know, but in any statistical setting, there are people here that are at that brink. And people around don't know where you're at. And you're almost at the end, or maybe you're paralyzed, and you're just ready to be able to give up. And here's the beauty of the church, is that God has brought ordinary people around us. We have the faith to lift you up. When it seems risky to be vulnerable or unsafe, this is the place that it is. It should be. But the people come along who can tell you, don't be discouraged. I'll be with you. And they know that I just want to get you in front of Jesus. Let's get you in front of Jesus and see what he does. Fourth thing in here is they both, to them, failure is not an option. These ordinary heroes, they're all in. They're going to do this thing. There's no turning back. They're not letting anything get in their way. They're risking their reputation. That's not going to get in the way. They're risking everything else. They see an obstacle. That's not going to get in the way. They go on. They're just going to see this through. Because failure is not an option for their friend. The Bible calls that perseverance. Hebrews 12:1 says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witness, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. That's a big challenge with Christians today, is commitment and perseverance. I see it all the time, and we certainly think of it in terms of involvement in church, attendance, and those kind of things. And those are surface things. It's really the distraction of our own interests, and are we willing to set those self-interests aside to be able to focus on the work of the Lord and what that looks like? These people are paralyzed. They need heroes. They need people who are coming alongside them, who can help them, who believe that failure is not an option, and that we're not willing to be able to give up. And when there's some obstacle or some doubt, it's like, no, it doesn't matter. We're going to push through this, and we're going to succeed. These ordinary heroes, they press on. They don't let distractions of how many VBS or how long it takes to get a pastor or whether members are here or people leave or whatever. Those are distractions. We've got to be focused on just Jesus, and that's what matters and what that looks like. At our church, we're going through a building campaign, and we spent 2 years on this process. What I love about the heroes in this process, people, even as we're making plans and thinking about what we could do, they're always saying, well, what do you think Christ wants? Always like getting it back in front of him. We want to make sure that our steps are always in line with what he wants. Even when we measure based on giving or not giving or all these other things that we often try to use to measure, none of those matter. They're just distractions. And this is what happens when we have people that are these heroes that are focused with failure not being an option. They don't measure things by commitment or resources. They measure by success or failure. Failure is not an option. So why do you do a VBS, regardless of number? Because you know that we're putting kids in front of Jesus. I don't care if it's one kid. It's a win. And we focus on that, and that's the success of what we do is our responsibility, our ability is only to be able to bring people from Jesus. We can't do, these guys couldn't convince Jesus to heal them. They just knew that all our job is to get our friend from Jesus. That's all our job is. God created community. So we all have ordinary heroes to lean on. When describing community of believers in 1 Corinthians 12:26, it says this: if one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. Every one of us has moments. I don't know. I know for me, where we begin to waver and question and we struggle, or we think we're going to do something we doubt. It's just the enemy works on us. And it's these heroes around us that are the ones that lift us up and say, no, let's stay on course to keep us focused. We deal with bad habits or touchy decisions or choices we can't make on our own. These are all the things that we face that heroes around can step up and help. I want to leave you with 2 questions that I hope will be burning in your mind. First one is this: if you're in your, I guess you guys added an insert, so if you didn't have it, that's fine, but you can see it in there. Who are the ordinary heroes in your life? I put a diagram in there in the notes, and I have a line to write down. Think of 4 people that you say, these are my heroes. These are the ones that come alongside, that are the ones that keep me focused on Jesus, or our contagious faith, or never consider failure an option. Who are those people that you have? And if you don't have 4, then think of who you could be and try to begin to build that relationship with those people, be vulnerable to be able to look to those people who they are. If you have them, let them know how important they are to you. Encourage them as well. But the other question, maybe even more important, is who are you an ordinary hero to? Who has God placed in your sphere of influence that needs a hero? Who's paralyzed and feels incapable of getting in front of Jesus for healing? They need someone who can keep an eye on the prize, because in their life all they see is the turmoil and the struggle. They need someone who considers the relationship more important than their own self-interest of their time or the resources or the inconvenience that they're, I'm here for you. That has a contagious faith that when there are doubts, they say, no, God's got this, it's okay. We're going to stay to this, he's faithful. Who says that failure is not an option. You're not going to fail this because we're with you. We're going to succeed. we're going to make it through whatever that looks like. Imagine if you could be that person who says, hey, Jesus is in town. He has the power to heal, and I want to get you to him. I mean, we sit there and I say we, meaning maybe I should just say me. We back away and almost apologize for inviting them to church. And if it's just to sit in a pew and listen to a speaker or music, I get why. But we have the power of Jesus Christ that can transform and change a life, who can meet any need and struggle and bring about healing in a life. No one else has that. We should be proud of that and eager to be able to share that. The world needs heroes. They don't need them with capes or superpowers. That's not the kind we're talking about. They just need ordinary heroes that are willing to carry people in front of Jesus. Here's the good news. That's what the church is. We're all full of ordinary heroes. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, what a beautiful story to remind us how your grace is so full and amazing. That even in this story, it wasn't, the faith was not dependent only on the paralytic, but in fact, it was the faith of the friends that drew you to respond. To be a testimony that what would be considered maybe insignificant to be significant and amazing, because it was a moment where you were able to also demonstrate your power and authority to forgive sins. Where we talk about how much we need healing in the people around us, and you have that authority to bring about healing and restoration. No matter who we come in contact, we know, Lord, that the answer is you. They might have financial problems or marriage problems. They might have business problems or just life problems. And while we don't discount all of those things and the guidance that comes from it, but it starts with you. Give us the courage to be like these friends, to be able to have that contagious faith and the passion, ignoring failure, and just the commitment to be able to come along these people you put in our path and draw them into your presence. Lord, you know who they are. Every one of us can look within our day, and we might miss the opportunities that are there, but there are people you bring in our path, Lord, that you want us to be your light, to shine, to be able to bring these people into your presence through us. Not to physically bring them to a building, but by being an instrument by you, we bring Christ to them. Help us to have the courage to be able to do that. I pray for the VBS that's going on this week. What an awesome opportunity to be able to be truly these friends. These kids, they might be coming here just for an activity. Parents might be sending them to get them out of the house. Who knows the reasons that they have? But there's a beautiful opportunity to bring these children before you. And I pray your Spirit works in a powerful way. And through the children, the parents are touched. Lord, help us to never forget our purpose here on this earth. It's not to just enjoy ourselves, but it's to be your witness into the world. Help us, Lord, be ordinary heroes.